My name is Aver. I was 24 when I walked on Westfield University's graduation stage. Everyone clapped, but I only looked for two people, my parents. They sat there quiet, like they didn't know what to feel. They were the same people who once told me, "You're not like Sophia. We're not spending money on you." I didn't cry that night. I didn't argue. I just promised myself one thing: I'll prove them wrong. For years, Sophia was the favorite. She got praise for everything. I worked hard, stayed quiet, and still felt ignored. When we both got accepted into Westfield, her letter was celebrated the same day. Mine sat on the counter like it didn't matter even though I earned a full scholarship. Later, my dad said they would pay for Sophia's school, not mine. "You'll figure it out," they said, like it was normal. So I did. I worked night shifts, studied all day, applied for scholarships, and sold handmade items online just to survive. No support. No calls. No comfort. Just me and my goal. College was brutal. I was tired all the time. I even passed out once from stress and not eating enough. One night, sitting outside in the rain, I felt completely empty. Then my phone rang. It was my grandma Martha. She didn't ask about grades or Sophia. She only asked, "Are you eating? Do you have a coat?" The next morning, she sent me a scarf, cookies, and a little money with a note. No shame in needing help. After that, small kindnesses started showing up. My old school counselor offered to help me find internships. MYgraduation invited me to simple things: ramen nights, tea in the lounge, quick check-ins. It wasn't big, but it was real. And slowly, I started to believe something important. I wasn't hard to love. I was just around the wrong people. Now I stand here as valedictorian, a business founder, and someone who made it without their approval. And the best part, I don't need it anymore. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? If yes, you're not alone. That was the night we became real friends. Then Harper came, my roommate. When she first moved in, I prepared for drama. I thought we'd clash. But Harper didn't compete with me. She didn't measure herself against me. She simply shared the space, calm and kind. At night, she played soft indie music. Sometimes she made tea and set a mug near me without asking anything. With her, silence didn't feel awkward. It felt safe. One afternoon, she walked in and saw me curled over my laptop. My screen was full of rejection emails from part-time jobs. Harper didn't make a big speech. She just pulled out a bag of cookies and slid it toward me. "Eat first," she said. "Then cry. Then apply again." That day, we sat on the floor and talked for hours about everything and nothing. About moms who only cared about appearances. About being tired of acting fine. About feeling like a fraud even when we worked twice as hard. Harper didn't try to fix me. She just stayed. And somehow, that helped more than advice ever could. Then there was Professor Adams. He taught entrepreneurship to 102, and he noticed me before I even realized anyone was paying attention. After class one day, he stopped me. "You ask sharp questions," he said. "Have you ever thought about starting something of your own?" I laughed. "I can barely afford lunch," he smiled. "Then you will be a great founder. You already know how to stretch $1. Before I knew it, he became my mentor. He helped me with grant applications, invited me to the campus startup incubator, and pushed me to enter a student competition with an idea I'd been quietly holding onto, a small digital marketing service. Not because he thought I was the smartest person in the room, but because he believed I had something worth saying and that it deserved to be heard. Little by little, I stopped waiting for things to go wrong. I stopped saying sorry for taking up space. I started to believe that maybe I wasn't too hard to love. Maybe I'd just been giving my love to people who didn't know what to do with it. None of these people were related to me, but they showed up when it mattered. And that's when I learned something simple. Sometimes the family that saves you is the one you choose. It started with a pitch I typed at 2 a.m., squeezed between tutoring sessions and microwave dinners. The idea was basic, messy, not perfect, but it was mine. I submitted it to Westfield's startup incubator thinking, what do I have to lose? Turns out, I had everything to gain. Professor Adams read my draft and left one comment at the top. You're not asking for permission. You're offering value. On that, when I got the email saying I made the final 10, I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen in silence, letting the strange feeling sink in. This wasn't luck. I had earned it. No one applauded in my room, but I clapped in my head. And for once, that was enough. I called Grandma Martha first. They picked my idea, I whispered. Of course they did, she said, like it was obvious. Some people bloom late, baby, but you were never a seed. They just buried you too deep. That sentence changed something inside me. The next few weeks were chaos in the best way. My dorm became a mini headquarters. Harper helped with the paperwork and schedules. Mia worked on brand colors. I gave free consultations to local businesses just to prove we could do real work. A cafe signed on, then a florist, then a yoga studio. I watched something grow out of nothing. No trust fund, no famous last name, just hard work, stubborn hope, and people who believed in me without needing a reason. Then my first invoice cleared, $227. I stared at it like it was $1 million. Because for a girl who used to count quarters for laundry, this wasn't just money. It was proof. It was worth. It was value I created without anyone's permission, without anyone choosing me first. On pitch day, I wore a blazer to sizes too big and shoes that tore up my heels. But I stood tall anyway. My voice didn't shake. I talked about clients, community, and resilience like I belonged at the front of the room. The judges asked tough questions. I answered with stronger ones. I didn't win because anyone felt sorry for me. I won because I earned it. When they announced my name national champion, I didn't think about calling home. I thought about Mia squeezing my hand. Harper crying before I did. Professor Adams nodding like this result had always been waiting for me. I didn't need my parents in the crowd. The people who mattered were already standing. That night, walking back under a quiet sky, I whispered to myself, you did this without their money, without their praise, without their name. You, and for the first time, I didn't just feel proud. I felt free. Then the next email arrived, and the subject line hit harder than I expected. Congratulations, Valedictorian. You've been chosen to speak at commencement. My heart jumped, then dropped, then started racing again. Not because I didn't want it, but because of what it meant to me. The girl who ate crackers for dinner. The girl who cried into laundry piles. The girl they said wasn't worth the tuition. Now I was being asked to speak for the entire graduating class, in front of thousands, maybe even in front of them. David and Sarah Miller hadn't spoken to me in over a year. I left, and they didn't follow. But a public stage at Westfield. Pride might bring them anyway. This wasn't just a speech anymore. It was a spotlight. And I hated the idea that they could show up and act like my success belonged to them. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall. My thoughts spun. Do I even want this? What if I freeze? What if they twist this into their win? That night I called Grandma Martha again. They picked me, I whispered. Of course they did, she said. You've always had something to say. They just didn't want to listen. They might be there, she paused, then said, then let them hear it this time. I barely slept. I replayed old memories like a loop: Sophia's birthday parties, my quiet report cards, the night that chose her and left me to survive on my own. By morning, something in me had shifted. Later that week, Harper found me sitting in the quad, laptop open, staring at a blank document. Speech, she guessed. Avoiding it, I admitted. I told her everything: the fear, the pressure, the old ghosts I didn't want to face. She listened, really listened. Then she leaned closer. Maybe this isn't about them, she said. Maybe this is you taking back the microphone they never handed you. What if I'm not ready? I asked. Harper's voice softened. Aver, you've been writing this speech your whole life. That night, I lit a candle, opened a fresh document, and typed the first line. This is for the ones who were told they weren't enough. And then I proved it wrong. The words poured out. I wasn't just telling my story, I was taking it back. This wouldn't be a speech to impress anyone. It would be a statement. They no longer had power over me. I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. And when I stepped onto that stage, I wouldn't be alone. I'd carry every version of myself that stayed quiet. And I'd finally let her speak. I wrote the speech like a slow, steady explosion, not loud, not messy, but impossible to ignore. I didn't want pity. I didn't want fake cheers. I wanted the truth clean, calm, and undeniable. I started with what people expected: gratitude for professors, classmates, and the community that helped me rise. Then I shifted. I talked about a girl unnamed, not pointed at, who was told in small ways, again and again, that she wasn't enough. A girl who had to prove her worth while others were simply handed theirs. A girl who fought her way into spaces where people said she didn't belong and stayed there without asking permission. Every sentence was simple on the surface, sharp underneath. No yelling, no anger, just clarity. One line said, not every success story begins with support. Some begin with silence and the decision not to accept that silence forever. Professor Adams read my draft in one sitting. You're not holding back, he said. Should I asked. He smiled. No. This doesn't stab. It slices. Still, I had one more move. I asked the university to add one short line to my introduction at the ceremony. Aver, first generation, self-funded graduate, scholarship recipient, and founder of a student business initiative. That was it. No emotion. No extra commentary. Just facts. But to the people who needed to hear it, especially them, it would say everything. Every dollar I earn alone. Every hour I worked. Everything they refused to give me. Harper helped me practice. She told me where to pause, where to slow down, where to stay steady. When I reached one line, she touched my arm. That's the one, she said. Say it without blinking. The line was, validation doesn't always come from applause. Sometimes it comes from surviving long enough to give it to yourself. On commencement morning, I stood in front of the mirror in my cap and gown, hair pinned neatly, and steady. For the first time, I didn't see someone begging to be enough. I saw someone who already knew she was. At the auditorium doors, Mia found me. You ready? She asked. I'm not here to impress, I said. I'm here to reclaim, because this wasn't a performance. It was a boundary, not drawn in anger but in peace. And if they were in the crowd watching, I hope they listened. Not because I needed them to understand, but because I didn't need their permission to speak anymore. The auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents held up phones. Names echoed. Applause rolled through the room like thunder. Cameras flashed like fake stars against the walls. Backstage, I stood completely still, not shaken, not scared. Just still. Like the air right before lightning. A coordinator nodded at me. You're next. I stepped into the lights. The room was quiet in a way that felt heavy. I scanned the crowd, third row, center. There they were, David and Sarah Miller. My mother sat stiff, lips tight, like she was bracing for something she didn't understand. My father's arms were crossed. His face looked like it used when I brought home report cards, careful boredom with a hint of doubt. They didn't clap, not yet. But they were watching, perfect. The dean stepped forward, introducing our valedictorian, Ava, first generation, self-funded graduate, scholarship recipient, and founder of the Westfield Student Business Initiative. The line landed like quiet thunder. The applause came late at first and even, confused, then it grew louder, wave by wave, until it filled the whole room. But I wasn't listening for noise. I was listening for freedom. I watched their faces. My dad blinked. My mom's hands tightened in her lap. One sentence did what for years of silence never could. It showed the truth. I walked to the podium, slow and steady. I looked at the crowd and didn't flinch. For years ago, I came to Westfield with 2 suitcases, a borrowed laptop, and a voice I didn't know how to use. I wasn't the loudest. I wasn't anyone's favorite. I didn't have family cheering for me. But I learned something. The people no one expects can still change the ending. My parents sat in the 3rd row. For once, they weren't running the story. They were just watching. And I didn't speak for them. I spoke for the ones who needed it, the girl who forced smiles at dinner, the boy working nights to pay for books, anyone who stayed quiet just to survive. This degree isn't just a paper, I said. It's proof. Survival is strength. Success can look different. I didn't shout. The power wasn't in my volume. It was in the silence after each line. When I finished, I closed my folder slowly. Not for drama, for control. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was leading. The clap started small, then grew into a wave. People stood, friends, professors, strangers. In the 3rd row, my parents stayed seated. And this time, I didn't look back. Later, behind the stage, the noise faded. My hands were damp. My throat was dry. I felt light, like I had finally put something down. Sophia found me in the hallway. No speech, no apology, just a quiet nod, like she understood enough. Then she left. And it didn't hurt. It felt like space I earned. Outside, my parents waited until the crowd thinned. They walked up with careful smiles and safe compliments. Then came the offer: help, support, anything you need. It sounded nice, but it was late, and it came with strings. They wanted to stand close now that I had proof. They wanted back what they couldn't control. I listened. When they were done, I gave a small, calm smile. Then I shook my head. No fight, no speech, just a quiet, final answer. They froze. They weren't used to being told no without a fight. But I didn't need anger anymore. I didn't need to raise my voice to close a door. I turned and walked away, with the last bit of applause fading behind me and the sun warm on my shoulders. It wasn't revenge. It was me choosing myself. My boundaries were real now, and they weren't getting past them again. The next morning, after graduation, I woke up to silence, no alarms, no messages, no pressure. Just wind at the window and a quiet kind of freedom. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't care who showed up late. In my small apartment, I made coffee and opened my laptop. A folder waited. Expansion plan, Q3. Not school, mine, my business, my future. Clients were coming in. Work was steady. For once, my life felt calm. I started rebuilding with small things. Walks without headphones, a candle at night. Pages in my journal written only for me. Some days the past still tried to return, but it didn't control me anymore. Healing didn't arrive like fireworks. It came slowly, like air settling after a storm. I booked therapy on an ordinary Tuesday, not because I was falling apart, but because I was tired of carrying everything alone. And for the first time, someone listened without judging, without defending anyone. Without telling me I was too sensitive, I stopped explaining my boundaries. I just kept them. And I built my own kind of family people who chose me. Harper showed up with tea and leftovers and made my couch feel like home. Mia left a small plant with a note. Let something grow with you. Professor Adams invited me to speak, not to show me off, but because he believed my voice mattered. Grandma Martha sent postcards that always said the same thing in different ways. You race still becoming. I wasn't perfectly healed, but I was finally living like the war was over. I read her note again. I like who you're becoming. Proud doesn't even cover it. I pinned it on my fridge so I could see it every morning. It wasn't money or a gift. It was something better belief. Little by little, I learned what real love looks like. Not big speeches. Just small things. Sip at midnight. Quiet company. An open door. A text that says, let me know you got home. No proving. No pretending. Just people showing up. And for the first time, I understood the truth. I wasn't hard to love. I was just giving my love to the wrong people. Now I was finally facing forward toward people who didn't ask me to shrink. They didn't try to carry me. They just walked beside me. Then one day, a plain white envelope was slipped under my door. No return address. I knew the handwriting. It was a family event. I didn't even care what it was for. What surprised me was how I felt holding it. Nothing. No tight chest. No anger. No need to prove anything. Just paper and a choice. So I went. Not to fix anything. Not to forgive. Just because I didn't need to avoid them anymore. I wore something that made me feel steady. I walked in without scanning the room. I wasn't there to fight. I was there as a guest, not as a daughter begging to be noticed. The house looked the same. The people looked unsure. Some offered small smiles and awkward hugs. I stayed polite and calm. My parents were across the room. We saw each other. No one moved first. It didn't feel cruel. It felt finished. We talked for a minute. Safe topics, surface words, no apology, no rewriting the past. Then it ended quietly, and I didn't feel broken. I felt free. After an hour, I stepped outside. The sun was setting, stretching long shadows across the driveway. I didn't stand there thinking about what I'd lost. I thought about where I was going next. Harper had saved me a seat. Mir was bringing wine. Grandma Martha had mailed cookies. My people were waiting not because they had to, but because they wanted to. I looked back at the house one last time. No hate. No longing. Just stillness. Then I got in the car and drove away in silence. And the silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Healing, I learned, isn't a big moment. It's smaller than that. It's not flinching when their names come up. It's trusting your own voice. It's waking up and not needing to prove you survived. I used to wait to be chosen. Now I choose. I choose who comes close, what I carry, and what I put down. So if you feel invisible right now, hear this. You're not too much. You're not hard to love. You're just stuck in a story that doesn't fit you. But you can change it one choice at a time. You can speak, even if your voice shakes. You can walk, even if no one claps. You can choose yourself anyway. That's where everything starts.